Well, good morning, everyone. It's about that time, so let's get started. I want to welcome everyone to the annual pre-session community gathering of faculty and staff for the 2020-21 academic year. My name is Mike Sosolski, and I'm the provost of Wofford College. It's my privilege and pleasure to officially welcome you to the beginning of this new academic year. We have planned a series of informative presentations this morning, updating the community on important ongoing projects at Wofford College, along with the latest information on how we are meeting the challenges of this current moment and our plans for responding to them. This afternoon, we'll offer 3 back-to-back Zoom sessions, each focused on a different aspect of Wofford's reopening of campus this fall. You will find links to join these sessions in your daily announcements this morning. So as we begin this program, I would like to now call on the Reverend Dr. Ron Robinson, Perkins Prothero Chaplain at Wofford College, to offer us an invocation to begin today. Dr. Robinson, if you would be so kind.
Mike, I don't believe Ron is on quite yet. I'm looking, but I don't see him. Oh, Ron is saying he's on. Hold on, let's let him in. Let's make sure he's in.
Sounds good.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ron.
All right, there we go.
Ron, you're muted.
There we go. Good morning. I'm Ron Robinson. I'm the college chaplain, and let me add to Provost Sosolski's welcome. Welcome to those of you who are returning, and especially those of you who are new faces. It's good to be together as a community, even if it's virtually. Wofford is a college affiliated with the United Methodist Church. There are about 100 of those around the country. Some of you studied at others, such as Duke University or Emory University. And being a United Methodist affiliated college means at least a couple of things. It means we champion academic freedom and that we welcome everyone, whether you're a person of faith or not. So everyone is welcome here in this community. One of the things I do in my role is bless people, places, and things. And so I'd like to begin today with a blessing for you. May you be blessed with hope and help for the days ahead. May you be blessed with courage as you face the challenge of new tasks. May you be blessed with confidence as you encounter the expectation of peers, parents, friends, and self. May you be blessed with opportunities to learn and to wonder. May you be blessed with discomfort at easy answers and half-truths. May you be blessed with a deep respect for one another so that Wofford College may be known as a community of openness and welcome. And lastly, may you be blessed with moments of grace, and may they be as frequent as the tolling of the college bell. Amen.
Thank you, Ron, for those timely and inspiring words. At this time, I would like to call on our president, Dr. Nave Samhat, who will provide us with an update on the state of the college. Following his remarks, Dr. Samhat will take any questions you may have. And to ask a question in this webinar format, you have one of 2 options. You can type your question into the Q&A feature, which is located at the bottom of your screen on the right-hand side. Or if you would prefer to ask your question live on screen, you may raise your hand to get the attention of our wonderful moderators, Cashlat Foster of ITS and Joanne Brazington, Vice President for Marketing and Communication. Now you'll find the raise hand button when you click on the participants icon at the bottom of your screen, and then look all the way to the bottom right for the proper button to raise your hand. So with those instructions, Dr. Samhat, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks to Reverend Ron for his welcoming invocation. It's always inspirational. And thanks to everyone for joining us this morning, to all our returning faculty and staff. It's great to, well, I wish I could say see you. I can't see you, but at least have you on this Zoom call. And for new faculty and staff, welcome to Wofford College. We're delighted to have you join this wonderful community. It's at a unique and special time in our history and in our nation's history. I guess the only good thing I would say about a Zoom meeting as opposed to an in-person session is that I get one more day without wearing a tie. For that, I want to thank the provost and his team for making that possible. We live in extraordinary times. There is a pandemic, a major health crisis shaping our nation, our world. Another murder of a Black man, Jacob Blake in Wisconsin, continues to remind us of race and injustice in our country. And the vigilantism that seems to be a response in some quarters, which is equally tragic. Fires out west in California, and Hurricane Laura and the tragedy along the Gulf Coast, which will make its way up through the heart of the Southeast, which might signal climate change crises. These are troubling, challenging times. And so we gather at the start of this academic year with some mixed emotions. I have a heavy heart, as I'm sure we all do, for these wrenching crises in our nation and in our community. But with every fall that we gather, I do so with great optimism. Seeing students on campus for the first time since the middle of March, seeing the campus come to life, even when they walk through a tunnel to get to Burwell Dining Hall, is very reassuring and gratifying. It gives me hope, and it should give us all hope, because that means we're able to do what we are meant to do, and that is fulfill our mission of transforming young lives in a place-based experience. We can engage our nation and our community in thoughtful ways, and we need to ask ourselves as we begin this academic year and search for hope, how can all of us at Wofford make a difference in our community, on our campus, in Spartanburg, in the state of South Carolina, the Southeast, our nation, and world? That is the most compelling question, it seems to me. And we can make a difference. We have an extraordinary community. And it was evidenced in March when suddenly, and unfortunately, we had to shift gears rapidly. Faculty, staff, students. We went to remote instruction and remote support for our students. Faculty and staff came together to deliver on our mission in profound, unique, innovative, and creative ways. And everyone across the college, our enrollment team, our advancement team, transformed how they do things, our athletics team, our student affairs staffers did great work in supporting our students near and far. Our counseling staff did extraordinary work. We were able to support students who needed resources, needed technology, needed computers. Our friends at ABI stepped up for us and supported our campus and those students remaining on campus. It was a remarkable transformation and a remarkable demonstration of commitment to what we do by everyone on this campus. I also actually want to give a special shout out and acknowledgement to our friends in facilities, grounds, and housekeeping, because since March, they have been on this campus every single day. Our friends in IT have been making sure that we keep the institution running with technology. But our facilities guys, and I say guides in the generic sense, being from the Midwest, have done remarkable work as well. They've been out there, rain or shine, day in and day out, to make sure the campus is ready for our return. And we should all give them a round of applause virtually. And I have to say that this moment is new to all of us. Certainly the senior administrative team, just as it's new to faculty and staff across the institution. And we're still learning, and we're doing the best we can, all of us together, as we prepare for the start of a new academic year. I want to offer special thanks to our working groups, Dan Dieter and everyone on that working group, for the return to college, started in the summer and worked relentlessly and tirelessly to put together plans and guidelines. Lisa Lefebvre and Beth Wallace in the Wellness Center, and reaching out to public health authorities on a regular basis and ensuring that we were doing things for the safety and well-being of our faculty, staff, and students on campus. Jennifer Allison and running the calendar committee. More than a few times we asked them to go back and reformulate calendar models, and everyone on that team as well. So a lot of people have put in a lot of work over the course of the summer to make sure that we could be here today to gather to start the academic year. I want to tell you that from March onwards, we've been guided by 3 core principles, and they're interrelated principles. First and foremost, to ensure the health and well-being of students, faculty, and staff on campus, each and every one of us. Without our health and safety and well-being, we have nothing. And that's been a priority in everything we've done and every decision we've made and how we've planned our guidelines in classrooms and our interactions with each other and with students. The second thing, which has been a priority, has been ensuring our ability to deliver our mission, a place-based living learning experience for our students. Our transformational impact can extend remotely, but we know its most powerful effect is when we're together. Even if we have to be socially distanced, it is when we are together. And it is from a position of strength that we're able to do this. Because the third priority has been to ensure to the best of our ability the material welfare of all of our staff, coaches, and faculty to preserve jobs and benefits for them, even if there were inconsistencies across the institution at different points between March and today. Unlike, say, the University of South Carolina or Furman or Clemson and other institutions across the state and the nation, all of which are fine institutions, we have not had to lay anyone off. We have not had to issue furloughs. We have committed ourselves to ensuring the material well-being of everyone on this campus, and we remain committed to preserving jobs and have prepared ourselves. But there is the possibility that changes in the larger environment will require of us some adjustments. We depend on enrollment and residency, and that's just the kind of institution we are. And we are going to do our best, not at the sacrifice of our mission, nor of the health and safety of students, faculty, and staff, but we are going to do our best to ensure that we can maintain the material welfare and well-being of everyone on campus. Chris Gardner, our Chief Financial Officer, will talk in some detail through these issues a little later this morning, and it will be, I think, a very informative presentation. It always is when Chris gives a presentation. So it's been a busy summer, though a quiet summer in some ways on campus. And as we begin year 1 of our 5-year plan, let me share with you where we are. Last year, the trustees approved a 5-year plan for enrollment growth of approximately 125 students, and some construction projects. Along with that came the issuance of some debt in order to do these projects, and that would be associated with fundraising as well. So if you've been around campus lately, you will see a lot of activity and construction of all sorts. We opened up the Jjr Hall, which is both a residence hall for 150 first-year students, as well as some classroom space and athletic facilities for golf, a future softball program, and baseball. That building is complete. And I believe it will transform that section of campus. If you go behind it and you see the green space between that building and Snyder Field, and I think it will have a huge impact on how students interact in that area of campus. The Chandler Environmental Studies Center is near complete. I was through there yesterday. That is truly an extraordinary building. It is equally transformational. It has several labs in it. It has perhaps, with all due respect to all the other classrooms on campus, it has what might be the most stunning seminar room on campus, with a view of the heart of campus that is just exceptional. It's gorgeous. It is a unique design. It was earned 3 Green Globes. And that is equivalent to a Gold LEED certification. We are the only academic institution with a 3 Green Globe building on campus. And Chris Gardner can correct me, but I think there were only a handful of others, maybe 3 or 4 other buildings in the state of South Carolina with 3 Green Globes. So we're very proud of that. Solar panels on top, water recycling, and rooftop garden are just some of those wonderful features. It's a unique building. I urge you to go through it when it's open. The library renovation is complete. It is a transformed working space for students, classroom, technology, and the ubiquitous cafe. Market C concept from our friends at AVI for beverages and food, like food items. If you come through campus, you'll see that the front of Burwell has disappeared, the foyer, and it is part of the Burwell renovation that will be done about a year or so, just slightly over a year from now. The top floor is available for dining. You have to go through the Great Burwell Tunnel to get there to the dining hall. The bottom floor is completely gutted now, actually, and they will begin doing some form work on the extension of Burwell later this year. And just by way, I've got a couple questions, and I don't know if I can answer them along the way. Our students living this semester, students have moved into the JJR Residence Hall upstairs, and the baseball locker room will be used. That's on the first floor, probably in the spring, assuming we have spring sports. Let's see. Now, the renovation, if you go over to Campus Life, if you go over to Campus Life, you'll see the renovation of that building. It's the first phase is complete. It's in the main lobby, and the Zach's area, there's still some work there. We do have furniture in there, and we expect phase 2 to take place next summer. Phase 2 will include the game room, the 20 White Theater, and we expect to do some work in Macmillan Theater as well. The post office is located over there, so you can get your packages there. And there are new bathrooms, including a gender-neutral bathroom also. But that is a much brighter space. We'll have more colorful furniture coming in soon enough, but it's all been designed at the moment for social distancing. Our plan is in the winter to replace a grass field with turf, so it has multiple uses. And our plan is also to start a softball facility sometime after the first of the year. There's still a couple of pieces of property that need to be acquired in that regard. And then finally, we are going to do Marsh Hall, renovate Marsh Hall, and that we'll do that next summer. That's about a $3.5 million project, and that will finish Marsh Hall. That requires some bathroom work and some common space work. And our track, we're hoping to do a track and field, and we're working with partners in the city and other community organizations to perhaps do that on the north side. Those conversations have started already. So I think we made pretty good progress on at least the physical portion of the 5-year plan. And we look forward to these other projects in the course of the next couple of years. I will just tell you that with Burwell renovation underway, it will be inconvenient. But it's an inconvenience that will result in what we all expect to be and know will be a fabulous new facility. And we're doing that with our partners and friends at AVI, and they've been very helpful in that regard. So let me just carry on. We'll take questions at the end. And so let me talk about how we finished up this past year. And again, Chris Gardner, our CFO, will add some additional color to our budget and operations. But we finished the year about $2 million ahead of budget and contributed $2.2 million to reserves to the college balance sheet. And that's the result of extraordinary work on the part of everyone. When we asked people to bring expenses, shut down expenses, that's what happened. Everyone across the campus committed to the fiscal well-being of the institution, and we were able to, in effect, perform extraordinarily well and to generate cash reserves, which will help us this year. Those reserves create a contingency or an emergency fund, as it were, and we'll need it this year more than ever. And again, Chris Gardner will talk about some of the parameters of response, financial response to different COVID circumstances that might arise during the course of the semester and the academic year. But I want to thank everyone across the institution. This is largely a result of, or almost entirely a result of the fact that we stopped spending money in March. We returned about $3 million or so to families for room and board refunds. And so that is after about $3 million. We received about $1.1 million from the CARES Act, half of which went to students to support students in need, and a half of it which supported the operations of the institution. So this was an extraordinary result. And again, it's a testament to the strength of the institution, of the college, and everyone's good work in what is shaping up to be a most challenging year. In terms of enrollment, there's not an enrollment bullet up there, but I would just like to share that good news. We had 498 first-year students and 21 transfers. Brand Stilley, VP for Enrollment, Brand Stilley, will detail our enrollment performance. It's been an extraordinary performance by his team. and we are an enrollment-driven institution. Again, if we don't have the enrollment, then we have a crisis. And we are different from lots of our peers in that we have had a record year for enrollment in terms of applications, the lowest level of selectivity we've had, and really the largest class we've had. Finally, the campaign for Wofford campaign total to date is $298 million. We have a $300 million goal, and our plan is to wrap up the campaign and celebrate its success in May of 2021. We had originally thought we would do it this October, but circumstances have dictated otherwise. And as you know, just as an aside, we have canceled all fall sports on campus. So any events associated with the celebration of those of these kinds of things have been canceled as well. This summer has been, as you might imagine, quite quiet, at least on campus. No summer school students on campus, no Panthers, no camps. The Panthers, we fully expect them to return to campus in next year. And they have another year on their contract with us with an option for 2 more years. So we'll be in touch with them during the course of this year. And finally, we've spent a lot of time preparing for the fall, getting ready for the fall. And again, the working groups and the wellness center staff, everyone has been working nonstop to put us in a position to open in the fall. In residence life, everyone is on campus this year. We do not have to go to Converse College and rent a residence hall as we did last year. We have plenty of room. Move-in has looked different than it normally does, and orientation will look different as well. Kudos to Beth Wallace and the Res Life team and the first year orientation team as well for accommodating and being flexible and innovative in how we're bringing students together and back to campus. We do have about 150 students in that new first year residence hall, but we also have plenty of space on campus for quarantining and isolation as needed. We do have the North Side Living Learning Community as a place also for quarantine and isolation as needed for students. There are roughly 14 beds there. And if you haven't seen it, I urge you to take a walk up College Street. And it is a lovely, lovely facility that will be used as a living learning community and civic engagement. Of course, one of the things that happened this summer, of course, was the ongoing tragedy of the loss of Black lives at the hands of police and the social unrest that followed. I was mistaken. Jacob Blake wasn't killed. He's paralyzed. But the tragedy is no less significant. A lot of language, a lot of talk this week on TV in the evening about law and order in America. And certainly we all appreciate law and order. But I think the fundamental issue is about equity and justice, social equity, social justice, economic equity, economic justice, environmental equity, environmental justice. Those are the foundational issues in our society that need attention. And they're the ones that give rise to the troubles and the unrest we see today. And it is a crisis that needs to be resolved. And we've said that over and over again in talking with students. I've said I've been around a long time, as many of you have, and we know that we've seen these moments over and over again. But let us hope that this is the moment where real change takes place. We need to fulfill our mission in this regard. We need to model and educate how we realize our goals, the shared goals we all believe in. I firmly believe we are all committed to the same principles of equity, justice, diversity, and inclusion, not only on this campus, but in our community, in our state, nation, and around the world. We are truly committed to that, and we're going to work to that. We have made strides. We have taken immediate steps, but as you know, during the course of the summer, we have formulated a new strategic visioning process to focus on these issues on our campus as a way to model dialogue, civility, to solve issues that we need to solve as a community, to do it in an inclusive manner, to be sure that all voices are heard, and to be sure that when we are done with this process, we are taking concrete, meaningful steps to strengthen our community for the future. That's our commitment. That is our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I formed, with consultation with others, a new steering group. I want to thank Ramon and Christine, Dr. Galananas and Dr. Dinkins for leading that steering group. It consists of faculty, staff, trustees, and they have begun working on this process. I'm grateful to their leadership and the participation of everyone in the steering group for their time and effort. They'll report to us regularly throughout the semester, and our plan is that they will present their findings to the board at the February meeting of the Board of Trustees. I encourage everyone to participate. This will only work if everyone participates. Those voices need to be heard across the spectrum. Students, faculty, staff, alumni, parents, trustees, our community members here in Spartanburg. We need everyone to participate. We need everyone to be engaged in this process to reimagine our Wofford College for the future, to make it what we want it to be in our ideal, a diverse, inclusive, and equitable institution. And that's my commitment. That's a commitment of the steering group. And I believe Ramon and Christine and our colleagues on the steering group will do extraordinary work to make that happen. So please, please participate. So as we begin this semester, here are a few reminders for everybody. When it comes to the pandemic, our Wofford Together page outlines our guidelines and practices and procedures for everyone. We have a staff pledge. We've asked students to sign a pledge. We have a daily symptom tracker, so you can record your conditions, and it's all confidential. We're reporting positive cases for contact tracing through the Wellness Center's confidential form on their portal. If you're sick, stay home. If you're feeling unwell, stay home. We want to be accommodating and flexible, but we also want to fulfill our mission for students in a safe, healthy, and responsible way. Like we've told the students from our porch last night as they were walking to Burwell, not telling them actually, Prem and I were kind of screaming at them, wear your mask, social distance, be responsible, otherwise we're going to send you home to your parents. And I have to say, not one student said, I'm willing to go home to my parents. So that was gratifying. And finally, let me just thank everyone once again. My appreciation runs deep. This is an extraordinary place, Wofford College is. The faculty and staff have come together in extraordinary ways and wonderful ways to teach in innovative methods and hybrid methods and remote methods to support our students. whether it's in career counseling, wellness, athletics, student activities, IT, and facilities. Everyone has come together. Our campus life and student development team planned for a move-in day that was seamless. I talked to a couple of parents yesterday who were just delighted with how it went off, even though they themselves had to carry all the things into the rooms. Our college's facility staff, again, they've been here every single day, making sure the campus is ready for us today. Campus safety has been here every single day, making sure the campus is safe and sound. Randy Hall and his team have been wonderful and supportive of our students who've remained on campus, our faculty and staff, and those of us who live on campus. They have protected us, and they do truly terrific work, and we owe them a debt of gratitude. Our HR team has worked with staff across campus to shape policies and practices for our transition to a COVID era. And of course, once more, our working group on the return to campus and our academic calendar groups have done wonderful work and have put us in this position as well to welcome students back to the college and for us to do what we do best, and that is to transform young lives. So I want to thank everyone and open it up for questions.
Okay, Nate, we have a couple of questions. First, from Catherine Schmitz. Given that the college keeps growing its student body, when is Wofford going to build another building for classrooms and offices?
That's a great question. I tell you what, when we, our 5-year plan was capped at 125 students because that would ensure we could maintain our student faculty ratio of roughly 11-to-1. On our current footprint with some of the additional classroom spaces that we have and that we've built through the library and the new residence hall and the environmental studies center, as well as, in fact, the north side, which has a classroom space as well. So I don't anticipate any more growth beyond where we are. And one of the things I might have said before, and Brand might mention it, we'll open up right around 1760 to 1765 students. The growth model that was to take place over 4 or 5 years would have taken us between 1775 and 1800 students. And that is as far as we need to grow. I don't anticipate any further growth beyond that level, and it will ensure that we can maintain and do everything we're doing on the existing footprint with our facilities, offices, labs, and the like. And the provost could speak to it, but we've also kind of added over time some faculty expansion in there as well. So to ensure we maintain that 10-to-1 ratio. So I just don't anticipate any growth beyond, maybe another 15 to 20 students over time.
Okay, we have another question. Trina Jones put this one in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any of the campaign designated for the endowment?
Yeah, most of the campaign is endowment driven. The roughly $300 million, I would say about 150 of that is built around facilities. Maybe I'd say 125. And CFO Gardner will no doubt correct me at one point, as he should. I'd say about 125 of that is geared toward facilities, and the rest is really towards, some of it is immediate annual gifts, but the bulk of it is endowment and endowment driven. Those gifts typically come in over a 5 to 7 year period. So I think you'll see the growth of the endowment not only through the growth of investments, but the corpus, the body of the endowment, grow over time as those pledges come in. And those pledges are both kind of cash pledges over 4 to 5 years, and many of them as well are also estate commitments well, you don't need me to tell you what estate commitments are. So I would expect that the real impact in terms of the body, the growth of the body of the endowment will be felt in the next 5 years or so. But right now, our endowment, the last report had us at about $207 million or so. So we've kind of almost fully recovered from the crash that took place in the spring in the wake of the pandemic.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. Oh, wait, we have one. Amy Telligman is asking, she says she would like to have a broader discussion about using the Northside dorm as a COVID quarantine location. This plan presents issues associated with health justice for the community members living in the North Side. It also has the possibility of furthering stereotypes about fear and safety students often associate with the North Side.
Yeah, I'm happy to have that conversation, and I would invite our other wellness colleagues, or invite you to have that conversation as well, Amy, with some of our wellness colleagues and Dan Dieter, who's chair of the working group. But one of the reasons why we feel that's a good space is because it is all self-contained. It is isolated. We can provide food to them. We have other students who are off campus isolating and the like. If you go over to the North Side, I would say it is a much different environment than you would have imagined a couple of years ago. There were 2 other projects going on, about 60 units by a local developer, which are generally, I think, if I'm not mistaken, market rate. And then right across the street is another apartment building. I think Professor Tim Schmitz could give us a number. I think there are about 60 units or so in that other apartment building. So it is a very different space than it was a few years ago when we began having the question of the North Side. But we just felt that was a good spot. Okay, Tim says 90 units. Thanks, Tim. But it was a good spot to keep to isolate students.
Okay, Mike, I don't see any other questions.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Dr. Samhat.
Let me just say, Mike, because I have a hard time giving up the mic. Let me just say one quick thing, that we begin this semester, this most unusual semester, in a remarkably strong and unique position. And again, Chris Gardner will talk in a little bit more detail. And I feel we should all feel very good about how we're starting this term. And we're starting this term in this good position because of everyone on this campus. It has been an incredible effort by everyone to bring students back, to prepare for the semester. And I am grateful to each and every one of you. And my wife wanted me to tell you that we remain committed to the most important Third Thursday happy hours every month during the semester, even if we're socially distanced and have to take up the entirety of Ben Jonson. So thank you for everything. Yes, and Kim, thank you. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion, again, has been doing incredible work as well in response to the events in our country and on our campus. Taifa Alexander has led that effort along with other faculty and students on campus, and grateful to all they've done with their workshops and the ongoing work. That office has a huge role to play in our efforts, and Taifa and Begonia and others have a huge role to play in advancing our goals in diversity, equity, and inclusion on our campus. Thanks. Thanks, Kim. I appreciate that.
Great. Thank you so much, Nave. We really appreciate your update and your comments. And I particularly appreciate the fact that you mentioned Jacob Blake and the ongoing turmoil surrounding the treatment of Black Americans in our country. It touches us every day. And I'd like us to take a moment of silence now to remember the victims of police violence, Jacob Blake being the most recent example. We're grateful that he has not perished, but there are many who have. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Sandra Bland, Laquan McDonald, Trayvon Martin, and so many others. I'd like us to take a moment of silence now to remember these Americans, these fellow citizens. Let's take that moment to keep them in our hearts. Thank you. So my purpose here this morning in speaking to you is really to welcome you to the start of a new academic year. And I do welcome us all to this year. I know that it will be a challenging year in many ways. There can just be no denying that this is a most unusual time for the college and the country. But I want to reassure you, just as President Sampat has mentioned, we are prepared. Even before the spring semester came to an end, teams of dedicated faculty and staff have worked tirelessly to prepare us. They worked throughout the summer as well to make careful plans for how we are going to create a safe and effective fall semester for our students. Really, no effort has been spared and no corner overlooked in our attempt to ensure that we will be able to deliver this high quality academic and residential experience that our students have come to expect and that they deserve. I really want to give a special tip of my cap to Dan Dieter, who you're going to hear from very soon, and his intrepid working group. They've worked diligently throughout the summer to think through what will be necessary to keep us all safe while resuming activities on campus this fall with integrity. Thank you so much, Dan and your teammates. I also realize that there is and will remain some concerns about how we are going to accomplish this together. The key to success is going to be grace and flexibility on all of our parts. We have good plans in place to deal with the eventualities of positive COVID-19 cases on our campus, for quarantine and isolation when necessary. And if further adjustments become necessary, we are well prepared to make them. But please know that tremendous work has gone this summer into reapportioning classroom spaces to accommodate for social distancing, to preparing expectations for behavior in residence halls and in other spaces. And students have pledged to abide by the new safety precautions, and we will abide by them too. As I mentioned earlier, grace and flexibility will be keys to our success as we strive together to give our students an in-person residential experience, the kind that Wofford College is known for. Having some remote learners, whether due to students' ongoing underlying health concerns or temporarily due to quarantine and isolation, is going to require faculty to be flexible in their approach to teaching. The Center for Innovation and Learning, led by Professor Ann Katya, has spent the entire summer preparing faculty for hybrid approaches to teaching and learning. And their Moodle page is now filled with useful information to help us all succeed. I might also mention that we have a highly contentious national election coming up in early November, in case you hadn't noticed. And no matter how things turn out there, we can anticipate that it will be an emotional time for many people. For all of you who work closely with students every day, please build some flexibility into your plans before and after Election Day. Politically in our country and also from a public health perspective, this will likely be a trying semester. Despite these challenges, I also believe that we should have some optimism that this can work. We've all read about the challenges starting the semester at larger institutions like UNC Chapel Hill and Notre Dame. The good news is that Wofford is not a large and less personal institution. In fact, I would say that Wofford's secret sauce is the way that we value relationships with students and with each other. The nature of what we do, but more importantly, the way that we do it, puts us in a unique position to be influential with students and with our colleagues about things like hygiene and safety during a pandemic. I know I plan to be very upfront and honest with my Humanities 101 class about how important it is that we all stick to this plan, in class and especially outside of it, for keeping the coronavirus in check on our campus. And I strongly encourage you to do the same. Students choose Wofford because they want close mentoring relationships with faculty and staff. So let's all use that capital that we have with them to encourage the very best behavior and adherence to the new health and safety guidelines that we've set forth in the Wofford Together plan. There could be no doubt that we're facing some serious challenges right now, as I've said before. It's worth noting, however, that every liberal arts college like Wofford is really in the same boat. And at the same time, there's a lot happening on campus these days that really can get us excited. Not least among them, all the new construction projects that are nearing completion are well underway. President Samhat just gave us a great update on the full complement of them, including a thoroughly refreshed Campus Life building, a brand new residence hall, and Burwell Dining Hall, which is in the beginning phases of a thorough renovation. But I want to draw special attention right now to the projects that will really enhance the academic program. First, the Jjr Hall Library has just completed a major 3-phase, 2-year renovation project. It's about $4 million investment there. The result is the creation of a thoroughly modern academic commons that brings together under one roof an array of important services that support academic and student success. This new plan incorporates all the excellent services that our library has always provided with the wonderful staff who work there, along with new homes for the Center for Innovation and Learning, peer tutoring, the testing center for students needing special learning accommodations, new seminar rooms, and the writing center, as always. I'd also like to take a moment to introduce Lisa Roberts, our new Dean of the Jjr Hall Library. Lisa joined us after a distinguished career at Principia College in Illinois, where she served as director of the college library. Lisa brings a tremendous skill set in academic librarianship, and since early July, she has been extremely busy working with our fine colleagues in facilities to complete the library renovation and the planning for reopening our library this fall under unusual circumstances. I want to offer a very warm welcome to Lisa, and I hope that you will all take the time to introduce yourselves to her in the coming weeks, extending a warm Wofford College welcome. No less exciting is the imminent completion of the Chandler Center for Environmental Studies. As we speak, the finishing touches are being applied to this amazing structure. Over 17,000 square feet of teaching space, laboratories, and offices that has, to everyone's delight, as the president mentioned, now earned 3 Green Globes, or the equivalent of LEED Gold certification. The building features a substantial array of solar panels on the roof, a rooftop garden, and scores of green features that will surely set the pace for new construction on college campuses in our state and region. It is a beautiful, efficient, and environmentally gentle structure that will serve our students and faculty for generations to come. We really look forward to a ribbon-cutting ceremony soon to celebrate a truly grand opening of this remarkable building on our campus. Another even more important reason for us to celebrate the start of the new academic year is the fact that we have 11 new full-time faculty colleagues joining us, including the inaugural Jim and Susan Keller postdoctoral fellow in philosophy, and it will be inhabited by a philosopher named Mohammed Velji. In prior years, we have introduced all of our brand new staff and faculty colleagues during this gathering, the pre-session community gathering. But since they cannot really be with us physically to stand up and hear all the cheering and all the welcoming clapping, We've decided that we're going to dedicate a special issue of the Conquer and Prevail e-newsletter to introducing them all. And then we'll give them personal introductions in places like faculty meetings and wherever is appropriate when we can actually be together physically to welcome them. So we want them to hear our cheers. So when you do see our new colleagues, please give them a warm and socially distanced, of course, Wofford College welcome. And I really want to give a shout out and a great, great thank you to all the search committees who worked so hard, not only to bring us a new wonderful dean of the Tesler Library, but also all of our wonderful faculty colleagues. These were tremendously successful searches, marked by wonderful diversity in hiring, and I know that we're going to be very, very delighted with all of our new colleagues, and we hope they're delighted to be here as well. So in addition to this, it's always an excellent occasion at pre-session community gathering to honor faculty colleagues who have earned tenure and promotion at the college. We grant tenure to faculty who have distinguished themselves through excellent teaching, scholarship, and service to Wofford. The following faculty underwent review by the Rank and Tenure Committee this past spring, and they were recommended to the Board of Trustees for tenure, which was unanimously approved, and here they are. Dr. Timothy Bursack in economics, Dr. Lori Cruz in biology, Dr. Zachary Davis in chemistry, Dr. Aaron Garrett in computer science, Dr. Kimberly Hall, English, Dr. Carolyn Martzberger in physics, Dr. Jeff Mitchell in biology, and Dr. Patrick Whitfill in English and creative writing. Congratulations to all of you. We're very proud of your accomplishments. I also know that you're going to want to congratulate these colleagues when you see them on achieving this major milestone in their careers. And in addition to this group, we have 3 faculty members who were recommended to the Rank and Tenure Committee for promotion to the rank of Associate Professor. And here they are: Mr. Benjamin Cartwright in accounting, Dr. Phil Dorrell in religion, and Ms. Diane Farley in accounting. Congratulations to all of you on this important milestone in your professional academic careers. And again, please reach out to these colleagues in any way you can to congratulate them heartily when you see them. The highest rank the college bestows to its faculty is the rank of full professor. Attaining this rank requires a record of distinguished accomplishment at the college. At its spring meeting, the Board of Trustees voted unanimously to promote Dr. Camille Bethay in Spanish of the Modern Language and Literatures and Cultures Department to the rank of full professor. Dr. Bethay, congratulations on this tremendous, well-earned achievement. And I know that your colleagues will be reaching out to you as well with hearty congratulations. Upon retirement from the college, the Board of Trustees may confer the rank of Professor Emeritus or Emerita to departing colleagues who have provided decades of devoted service to the college. This past May, the trustees voted unanimously to confer this rank on the following retiring colleagues. And here they are: Dr. Terry Ferguson in Environmental Studies, John Forbes in Finance, John Lane in Environmental Studies, Dr. Frank Machovic in Economics, Dr. Douglas Rayner in Biology, Dr. Alliston Reed in Psychology, Dr. Peter Schmunk in Art History, Christy Sellers in the Music Department, and Dr. Dino Trachis in English. Congratulations to all these retiring colleagues. And due to the changes in our regular practices brought on by the pandemic, unfortunately, last March, we were sadly unable to celebrate these dear retiring colleagues in the way that we've traditionally done. But we definitely will not neglect to do so when the conditions allow us to do it, and we'll do it in style. Together, they represent many decades of devoted service to our students and to our institution, and we look forward to honoring them properly, and I hope soon. Finally today, I would like to make good on a commitment that we have always honored during commencement. And that's another college ritual that we sadly had to forego due to health and safety concerns imposed on us by the global COVID-19 pandemic. Each year, the college honors 2 distinguished teachers and scholars by presenting awards. They are the Millikin and the Covington Awards, and they're awarded to faculty members in the sciences and humanities or social sciences, respectively. Because we were prevented from doing this past May, and then again this past August, it is my pleasure to do so now. The Philip Covington Award for Excellence in the Teaching of Humanities and Social Sciences is named in honor of Philip Stanhope Sheffield Covington, a beloved academic dean of Wofford College who served from 1953 to 1969. Philip Covington was widely recognized in academic circles as a creative and brilliant teacher, as well as a speaker of unusual ability, said his longtime friend and colleague, Dean of Students Emeritus, S. Frank Logan, a member of the Wofford class of 1941. Covington was a member of Phi Beta Kappa, the Blue Key National Honor Society, Sigma Chi, and Sigma Delta Psi. The Covington Award winner receives $5,000 per year for 3 years. One recipient is named each year, and the funds are used at the recipient's discretion for research, travel, or other professional development activities. This year's Covington Award for Excellence in the Teaching of Humanities and Social Sciences goes to Dr. Sissy Fowler, Associate Professor and Department Chair of Sociology and Anthropology. In addition to her record of consistent excellence in teaching and advising, Sissy has recently published a scholarly monograph on the cultural significance of fire and has been the recipient of a faculty Fulbright grant to conduct research in Indonesia. Congratulations, Sissy, and I know you can hear us all applauding in our own spaces here. We will find an opportunity to applaud you in person soon. So congratulations. Now on to the Millikin Award. The Roger Millikin Award for Excellence in the Teaching of Science is funded by a $1 million endowment providing a $50,000 prize, that's $5,000 annually for up to 10 years, for use by faculty in pursuing research, travel, and professional development. The award recognizes outstanding performance in the teaching of science. Full-time faculty in all science disciplines, biology, chemistry, environmental studies, computer science, geology, mathematics, physics, and psychology are all eligible for this award. This year's Millikin Award for Excellence in the Teaching of Science goes to our fine colleague in the Department of Biology, Dr. Stephanie Baker. Stephanie has served as Vice Chair of Biology for the past several years, conducted research with students and colleagues at VCOM, and has been a strong leader in teaching excellence at Wofford College. She is well deserving of this award. We're very proud of you, Stephanie, and congratulations. I'm just going to let everybody read the comments because they're terrific. That is the end of my remarks today. I am very happy to take questions. If there's anything that I'm able to answer, feel free to raise your hand, ask it on the screen, or type it into the Q&A. Otherwise, we can move along with our program. Lots of congratulations coming in. Well deserved. Great. Well, why don't we just go ahead and move on with our program. At this point in time, I would like to welcome Mr. Dan Dieter, who is Wofford's Director of Business Services and Risk Management. And he will be giving us the latest information about how the college is responding to the realities of COVID-19 on our campus. Since last spring, Dan has led a college working group that has conducted research and recommended important policy responses to the impact of the pandemic on Wofford's campus. They've done careful and thorough work. Dan, I symbolically hand the microphone to you, my friend.
I unmute myself. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for kind words early on, but clearly, as was mentioned, I have not done this alone. There's been a working group of people who have done a just an enormous amount of work through the summer to make this possible. I'd like to recognize those individually now because I don't think those names have been widely published, and I think they deserve recognition. So our working group includes Martin Agner from ITS, Dudley Brown from OMC, Lisa DeFreitas from Advancement, Karen Goodchild from the Art Department, Mary Carmen Jordan from Admission, Brian Lemire from Residence Life, Chi Lee, of course, is in Human Resources, Mark Lyon from Athletics, Tim Schmitz from Assistant Provost's Office, Sherry Tiger from AVI, and Beth Wallace from the Wellness Center and from Health Services. Jennifer Allison also played a role in our committee throughout the summer. As has already been mentioned, she was the chair of the Academic Calendar Committee, and we each invited the other to attend those committee meetings. I attended far fewer meetings than she did with our working group, so I very much appreciate her involvement and assistance as well. So let me move through some remarks. In addition to the working group, I also want to point out that we had a group of students who were identified through the admission office and in campus life and other areas, who named themselves the Student COVID Response Leadership Team and have been active all summer assisting us with not only crafting and writing the pledge, which students all signed and that actually was part of the pledge that we all signed, but also in doing social media promotion of the Wofford plan, encouraging folks to take those guidelines seriously, to encourage various means of interacting in the pandemic area, social distance and otherwise. I just wanted to point out that they had an important role to play, and I think some of their contribution was among the most important contribution in our work this summer. Students listen to students better than they do others sometimes, I'll just put it that way. So all of the groundswell of support that we can get from that group of people is very important. Okay, moving through, I put together a couple slides, but I'll try not to read them, just kind of to remind myself. I want to talk first about the face mask requirement because this may be the single most important requirement that we have in the plan. Numbers prove again and again, even though not scientifically necessarily in South Carolina, communities that have face mask ordinances see far fewer virus spread situations than communities that do not. There's just so much evidence that suggests that a community that wears face masks is far less likely to pass the virus from person to person, and certainly not in large cluster environments. Most of the situations in colleges and universities that we're reading about, like North Carolina State, Notre Dame, Alabama, the list goes on, most of those instances took place in off-campus parties where face masks were not worn. So communicating this and participating in a new culture at Wofford, which says that we all wear our face masks to protect each other, is probably the most important leg of this plan. I've put a note that outside equals public space because our plan refers to public space as one of the areas that people need to wear face masks. So you need to wear a face mask outside. A lot of our students are doing that. I think that's getting communicated. I think we need to increase that number so that it's close to 100% and not 80 or 90%. And what we do to show the upperclassmen as they arrive in the next few days what our culture is will go a long way to communicating that expectation. So that's my opportunity to say that yet again. From a staff or faculty standpoint, you are not required to wear a mask in your private office. But let me say that a private office, private is an important word. If you share an office with someone else, it's likely you should wear a mask, and at least consider that possibility, because you are exposing yourself to potential spread of the virus. So that's the face mask requirement, and all I really have to say about that at this time. Social distancing is also important. As we all know, 6 feet is somewhat of an arbitrary number that's been established, but it is a widely accepted number. And we ask that people maintain that distance at all times, and that includes inside or outside. That's not just in the lobby of your building. That includes the dining hall. When you go to the dining hall, you can remove your mask to eat, but when you're done eating, you replace it, you put that mask on, you get your distance and move on. So that's an important factor as well. Hand hygiene, this seems really basic, but you know, we can't say it enough. I find myself sometimes rushing through hand washing, and it's because we kind of become so used to the idea that we should do this that we kind of lose focus on the idea that we need to do it for 20 seconds. So make that a good habit for yourself. It's probably good hygiene anyway. It will help us with flu season in addition to coronavirus. So that's a good habit to have. Hand sanitizer is available all over campus. I'm sure you've seen it in various places, including classrooms. So I've been led to understand that we have drums of hand sanitizer in facilities. So we have no shortage. Use it as needed, please. Why don't you move on to the next one? Classrooms are a very important part of our plan because obviously that's where our learning takes place. And as was mentioned earlier, Tim Schmitz and myself and others spent a lot of time this summer. Boyce Lawton spent a lot of time on this, Jennifer Allison, working on making it possible to have all of our classrooms socially distanced and provide space for those classes to occur, which was safe and appropriate for teaching. So you will find that capacity labeled on the board in some classrooms. You will find blue painter's tape marking X's on desks or space where students shouldn't sit. We did not remove all the furniture from classrooms to leave only the correct seats in it, largely because it would have taken an enormous amount of storage, an enormous amount of human capital to move it, and it seemed impractical to do that and then worry about whether we had the right desks in the right room and the right building and the right, by the time we're done, we might end up with stuff all over the place. It just didn't make sense to us. So you'll find chairs stacked, you'll find desks, they're shoved together and facing the wrong direction in the main building and things like that. We've added plexiglass at teacher stations so that we provide an extra level of protection for the classrooms. We think that's important, and faculty can teach behind those. Obviously, face masks are required in those classrooms. We have disinfectant wipes in all the classrooms so that the surfaces can be wiped down as you walk into a classroom. Our facilities department will also be sanitizing classrooms nightly. This is an important activity which will be happening between 6 and 10 p.m. each night. And if there are activities that need to happen in those rooms, we need to communicate with facilities or arrange to make sure there's a way that that gets done. We can't interrupt that important activity. We're working on some outdoor spaces have been identified. A few of them will have tents. Most of them will not. working on a reservation system where you can reserve this outdoor space. If there is, if the demand is not so great and it is allowed, we may be able to reserve a space for an entire course, but when we begin, we will look at it as a space for a class session as opposed to a space for an entire class to meet for the entire semester. So Tim Schmitz is working on that. Next slide, please. We've talked a lot about the daily screening and the pledge. We're working obviously to get rid of any technical hiccups with the daily screening form. I think we've got over those after the first really heavy day. I don't know if anybody ran into that issue. But that daily screening is important. We can't say it enough. If you are sick, you don't feel well, have any of those symptoms, please stay home. I do believe that we can build a culture which will be a lot better prepared to deal with the flu as well moving forward because of these kinds of precautions and this kind of instruction. If people would all stay home when they had the flu, for instance, we wouldn't pass it as much. People all wash their hands, all those kinds of things. So some of this stuff is very basic and very straightforward. I believe everyone's seen the pledge, but it's an important pledge. Wofford together can do this. And that point was made by by Provost Sosolsky, also by our president. But we have to do it together. And if we have weak links, we'll run into the problems that other larger schools have run into. So it's very important that we do this together, that we all commit to the things that we all commit to together. And, you know, the virus does not discriminate. It does not care whether a person is a good friend of yours or not. You know, so I think sometimes it's hard for people to say, well, this person's safe. They're a good friend of mine. I don't have any reason to be concerned about that. I don't think that's an appropriate way to look at this virus. It's shown itself. Obviously, it's going to spread to whomever, and it does not discriminate based on friendships or relationships. So please, not only on campus when you're in your office or in your workspace or at the dining facilities, but in your life at home, practice these basic precautions so that we're not bringing things back to campus. I think that's a critical piece of this too. There's a lot that's written about blaming students for failures of these plans, and I will just, my 2 cents on that is that we are all open to blame if we don't follow. So let's be consistent in our application of those guidelines and move forward together and get through the semester. I'll say a couple things about isolation and quarantine, though I'm not the expert on it. Those in the Wellness Center are. Isolation and quarantine is our ability to move people who are COVID positive into isolation. So they're always by themselves. That's why it's called isolation. And they are not to leave that space, okay? I mean, I think I wanted to say this partially in response to Amy's comment. The people who are in Northside will not be leaving the Northside building while they're there. So I don't think there's any particular concern to the community. They'll be in a self-contained space in our Northside building. And quarantine, obviously, are those who we have identified through contact tracing, which we would gain that tracing through interview with the COVID positive person or the contact tracing process, if you will. And once those people are identified, they are placed into a quarantine, which could be in multiple types of spaces. But again, quarantined individuals are not to leave that space. They might share a space with another person if they were part of the same exposure, but they're not going to be free to roam. So certainly not the way we interpret quarantine. I think that's the end of my, is that the end of my slides, Joanne? Yes. So I wanted to kind of give a basic run through and then spend most of the time answering questions that I'm sure people have.
Yes, you already have a good number of questions, Dan. This one is from Dave Kusher. He says he's seen many people on campus wearing the mask over their mouth, but not their nose. Somehow we need to tell all of them the required way to wear a mask. Actually, that might be for me in our office. We keep putting that out there.
Yeah, I think it's a good one for, and this is a good venue to talk about that, is talk about how we might spend time speaking with people who work in our areas, in our departments, about not just proper mask wearing, but proper hygiene and all the other things that we expect. You know, it's probably worth a half-hour meeting to do that, Zoom meeting or otherwise, right? But at least we need to run through that process with everyone so that everyone fully understands it. We could, I see Lisa's suggestion that we could do a video. I think that's a good idea. Perhaps we can just show people in a video format. But I think there are people sometimes who get missed in those types of communications, might not even be on this meeting, for instance, who we need to make sure we reach out and communicate with.
Okay, we have some other ones. Natalie Grinnell is asking what if students in places like main building need an extra left-handed chair or desk?
We can move from classroom to classroom in that environment or in that situation. We did go through most of those. As I'm sure this is never perfect in any semester, right? You have a certain number of left-handed desks in each classroom, and for some reason you end up with 10 left-handers in a class of whatever. Now that's a poor example because there aren't space for 10 chairs in most of Maine's classrooms. But most of the ones we went through, there were at least 2 or 3 left-handed desks in each one of those rooms. But if we need to, we can move them from one room to another. Just trade them.
Dan, can you talk a little bit about what the college is planning for testing? We have had a lot of questions about testing.
So we have looked at various things. As you probably know, most of you probably heard this over and over again, that the college made a decision to follow CDC and DHEC guidelines and not do universal testing for faculty and staff or students. We did end up making a recommendation to students at the end that encouraged them to complete testing before they came. Testing is something that's rapidly evolving, and we hope that we will have an effective means of doing some group testing in the fall where we might just randomly test certain numbers of people in the community. But again, it is something that's rapidly evolving. I wish we had access to the South Carolina saliva test that you could do in 45 minutes or less in terms of the results. Another thing that impacted our decision about universal testing, quite frankly, was the turnaround time on results from the labs. We were seeing in July testing results that would take 6 to 10 days to be returned for people who were tested, which is just, it renders the test, you know, nearly useless in some senses, unless you take the precaution to quarantine or isolate the people who are waiting on those test results. And there's also an enormous, interruption in a person's life to wait for those results if they're waiting for that long. Another factor that I sometimes forget to speak to in terms of whether we should do universal testing or not is the issue of equity and availability of tests. It may not be necessarily true in Spartanburg, South Carolina, though I think it somewhat could be the case. But there are places in the country where there are shortages of reagents and test supplies and other things where if you take a large groups of people and universally test them, you are draining that supply nationwide. I would be interested to know what the total number of tests used by colleges and universities across the country was, and how that impacted shortages and other things across the country. The third and final reason that we were encouraged by public health and also by regional experts to not do universal testing is that a test is a snapshot in time. The moment you take that test is the only thing that you are proving. So if I take a test today at 10:30 in the morning, I'm negative at 10:30 in the morning on Thursday, August 27th. That doesn't mean that I'm negative at 4 o'clock in the afternoon the same day. It doesn't mean that I'm negative 3 days down the road. So the notion of doing testing, you know, a week to 2 weeks before students return to campus was a bit of a difficult one to really justify, because we had there's no real assurance that that result was still the same when they did get back to campus. And there's a bit of a, I hate to put it this way, but a bit of a get out of jail free card notion to the idea of a negative test that I'm not sure we wanted all of our students to, well, I'm negative, I'm good. So, I mean, we need to, because we can't say that, you know, a week from now, that same result is true, we can't have people being lax about the other guidelines because they think they're fine and because they think the 5 of their friends are fine too. So that's another reason on the testing thing. I'm happy to answer any other questions on testing, but that's a start of where we ended up on that.
This question, Dan, is from Tammy Cooper. If you observe an employee not following guidelines, what is the process to handle this?
Well, I think there are a couple of ways you can handle it. I think it's probably depends on your relationship with the employee, obviously. If you have a relationship with that employee, I would encourage you to call them out. I just, you know, don't get yourself in a fight, but I think it's perfectly appropriate to ask an employee, mask up, or whatever phrase you want to use. And frankly, as I walk around campus and I'm wearing my mask, it's amazing how many masks pull up when I'm walking around. I mean, I think the best way that we ask people to do this is by doing it ourselves, and by, again, just getting as close as we can to 100% participation in wearing masks everywhere we go on campus. And the other option is you could, of course, contact their supervisor. That would depend on how you want to do that. I suppose if you're concerned about that, you could send a note to Human Resources.
Okay, this is a in the classroom question from Ann Roderick. Are we asking students to wipe down desk as they enter? Do we have sufficient wipes?
The answer to that question is yes and yes. What you'll see in the classroom right now is a couple, you know, containers of wipes, but those represent just a fraction of what we have in our stock, so those will be replenished. And yes, use them. I would expect that 1 wipe per student. They have to get the wipe and they have to go wipe, because those things don't have a forever life, as you probably know from your home or personal use. They dry out after a period of time. But you know, if you wipe down the surface within the first minute that you've got that wipe, I think you're fine. So wipe down the desk, wipe down the chair, or anything you're going to touch.
This is another classroom question. Is every classroom equipped with plexiglass? Last week or so, Kerry Voller says he went to Daniel Building to look at 2 of his fall classrooms, and neither of them had plexiglass installed.
Okay, I think there may be a couple that didn't get it, but please let us know where those are if you identify those spaces, and we'll try to determine why they don't have plexiglass on them. It is supposed to be a standard part of it. If there's an instructor's desk in that classroom, that's where you will find it mounted. I can imagine there might be some small classrooms. If you have like a little seminar room that might hold normally 12 people, they might not have plexiglass in them because there's no real front of room.
Okay, this is from Rebecca Parrish. Have all classrooms been marked for distancing? Do they all have hand sanitizer and cleaning supplies? Natalie Grinnell is reporting that her two classrooms did not have anything marked or no cleaning supplies.
Okay, we have been, again, Tim Schmitz and I walked around the entirety of campus, and what we understand is that we hit every classroom. It's possible we missed one. If we did, please let us know what that classroom is. We have marked, in some cases, we've moved desks away so there are no X's. So what's left is chairs and desks, and you see it pretty clearly. In other cases, we've just marked chairs with X's or turned them around so that they're not facing the right direction, the tablet arms and main and so forth. So yes, let me know or Tim know where those classrooms are. The supplies should be there, and if they're not, we'll get them over there.
Okay, this question is from Bill DeMars. Is the college looking into adjustments or investments on ventilation within campus buildings to limit aerosol spreading of COVID-19?
We did look at this. We continue to look at how we can change air exchange rates. We had our facilities leaders have talked to our mechanical engineers to talk about that. It's a difficult proposition on a campus where a lot of the buildings that we have are the age they are. But for the most part, all these building systems were developed to keep humidity out, which meant keep outside air out rather than invite it in. So that's why you find buildings without working windows. That's why you find some of those types of systems around there. So this is something we're working on, but again, I think our goal was to make sure that we were protecting people to the best of our ability. And if we can change those exchange rates, we are doing so. And if not, we're counting upon, the masks and the distancing to take care of the health and safety requirement for those classrooms.
As a follow-up from Bill DeMars, will there be any additional requirements or incentives or access for flu vaccines?
We have ordered flu vaccines for everyone, I'm told by the Wellness Center, and everyone will have an opportunity to get those vaccines. We would encourage, as the CDC and every public health agency is, we are encouraging everyone to get flu vaccines this year because they feel it could be helpful.
Okay, it looks like Tim Schmitz has answered Vicki Gilbert's questions. John Fahrenkopf, has the college evaluated how effective the ventilation? Oh, wait, we've already answered that one, sorry. Caroline Mark, is there a procedure for maintaining social distancing as students enter and leave class?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have asked them to keep that 6 feet of distance at all times. I think we probably will need to encourage them to do that in multiple spaces as everyone adjusts to that process. We have looked at, if we have not finished, we have begun the process of looking at directional signage in hallways and exit only and entrance only doorways to buildings. So that traffic flow is something that will take a little time and probably a little instruction for people as they're moving around. But the idea, obviously, we can't have people gathering in the hallways in between classes because that's violating that distance situation. And that's a change of life. That's something people obviously are accustomed to all the time after classes, and it's going to take a little time to, suggest that, we can't do this. It just is not appropriate. And, frankly, those hallways will get crowded, so we have to move people through.
Now it looks like we just sort of have comments. Tim Schmitz is commenting, some outdoor spaces can be reserved now in our existing system, spaces like the pavilion. I don't know that the system, including the tents and outdoor spaces, will be up and running by Monday. He will try to make that happen. Tim, we really appreciate you. You are working super hard. Thanks. First priority has been the classrooms. The tents are going up on Friday. He's going to try to get a map. I don't know if everybody can see that. That's why I'm reading it.
I want to answer Andrew Green's question.
Okay, go right ahead. You call it out and read it.
Well, I think he was asking about testing people when they're sick.
Oh, got it.
We will test people when they're sick. If I didn't talk about that, I probably just assumed people knew that's what we would do that, of course. If we have people who are symptomatic, we'll find a way to get them tested. So that's, I should have said it. That's my fault. And Lisa will speak about that at the 1 o'clock meeting.
Yeah, that 1 o'clock meeting is going to answer a lot of questions as well. Missy Clapp is asking about how to get supplies for the library. Facilities has helped us in OMC. When we wanted supplies, we've done one of those work orders and supplies have miraculously shown up because that's what they do. They do a really good job at that.
Thank you, Joanne, that's right.
Lisa Lefebvre is saying she can speak to a lot of this at that 1 o'clock meeting, so make sure you sign up for that. Mike, I don't see any new questions.
Yeah, that was a lot of questions. They were good questions. And I'll just point out for the 1 o'clock meeting, the 2 o'clock meeting this afternoon, and the 3 o'clock, I don't think there's any pre-registration required. These are just going to be held like regular Zoom meetings, and the links you can click on and just join the meeting through that link. And they're all in the daily announcements. Oh, we got a question from Trina.
Trina, she's asking about the gloves. Again, Trina, I think if you just fill out a work order and let facilities know you want those gloves, you can get them. Okay, this one is from Camille Bethay. She's asked this before, but she's wondering what Wofford's tipping point will be. In other words, how and under what circumstances will the decision be made to send students home or go remote?
That's the million-dollar question for most any institution. I hate to use this answer, but this is the only one that's really appropriate. Honestly, we will know when we see it whether we're in that situation. It will involve a number of different considerations. One is the availability of isolation and quarantine spaces. If we're no longer able to effectively isolate and quarantine people, that will be an issue that could affect what we do moving forward. It will make a difference where clusters of cases occur and or the numbers of them, whether we would decide to make a change or move toward remote classes. Those types of things are the considerations. But in terms of being able to pick a number, first of all, numbers kind of change in the sense that some people move from isolation and then back into the general community, but the number still stays on the count for the month, depending, when that occurs. So if you look at, if we have X number of, if we have 9 positive cases now, that might include 4 or 5 positive cases that have been resolved in addition to 4 or 5 new ones. So sometimes the numbers game is not the most appropriate way to look at that. And again, if we have a great deal, of a lot of positive tests and a high percentage of positive tests and those kinds of things, things in the community could still impact us. Obviously, numbers are currently down in Spartanburg and South Carolina. Testing numbers are also down. So, you know, we pay attention to where those trends are as well. And we'll pay attention to the trends on the percentage of positive tests in those the community at large as well, because I think those are both indicative of things that we need to be concerned about if things are spiraling. I'll add one other thing to that, and that is the availability of hospital care is a big number for us, and that's why the community number can make such a big difference. So we look at available beds at regional, we look at available ICU beds, and even, you know, not to be morbid, but available ventilators, because those things, if the community resources, health resources were stretched, it would be irresponsible for us to continue, you know, if we were having a big problem ourselves as well. So
Okay,
does that
Dan,
answer that question?
Yeah, I missed this one earlier. It's from Stacy Hedis. Will students be allowed to occupy Great Oaks Hall in Millikin Science and other large spaces?
So that's a good, we are finalizing some number standards, but basically, you know, if we have 6 feet of distance right now, they can use those spaces. Some of that space has been distanced in Great Oaks Hall, some has not. That was not our first priority. The classrooms were, but we probably will move to that space next, spaces like that next. Lounge spaces in residence halls, for the most part, have either been removed or distanced. And we've seen some of that as well in campus life building and all over campus. So yeah, that's a good question. We're looking very seriously at gathering and event numbers right now, because we want to be consistent about not allowing those things to get too large, because that does seem to be something that does impact on whether transmission happens. The larger the group, the larger the chance of transmission and so forth. Yes, in the library. Good, Mike. The library has already been spaced. Thank you.
Sissy Fowler, congratulations again, has asked if this session will be recorded. Yes, this session is being recorded right now, which makes me cringe every time I go back and watch them. But they are going to be posted with all of our town halls at wofford.edu/coronavirus. And then there's a town hall icon, and we're just putting them all there for now.
And Joanne, that's true of the afternoon sessions as well, right?
Yes, all the afternoon sessions, we can post all of that there.
That's fantastic, because some folks have, you know, other things they need to be doing and would love to hear what's happening there. That's great.
One last thing, it looks like Dan Mathewson basically saying that the wipes in the classrooms, Clorox wipes have that warning on them. So it might be a good idea for us to supply classrooms with gloves. So I'm sure facilities is going to be on that. And Adita Soto, who monitors the COVID dots for students and staff? The stats, maybe? I don't.
Stats, maybe, numbers. Well, if that's the question, the answer is that our wellness center keeps track of those numbers. Lisa Lefebvre does so through the confidential reporting form, and those numbers are then shared with the working group and, of course, the OMC, so that those can be published.
And they are published at wofford.edu/coronavirus. Rebecca Parker is clarifying. She's referring to the COVID tracking green dots.
Also the Wellness Center. The answer.
Yeah, sorry.
So your answers come at 1 o'clock today, but the Wellness Center tracks those. They get exception reporting for those.
Okay, I think that's all the questions.
And look at that. We are remarkably right on time. So let me thank Dan. Dan, you fielded a ton of questions and your working group has done a ton of work on this. We really, really appreciate all of that and your willingness to answer all the questions that come up today and the ongoing work that we know will continue through the fall as we make any necessary adjustments. So thanks a lot, my friend.
Welcome. Thank you.
All right, so we have a 15-minute break planned, after which we will have 2 more half-hour sessions. We'll hear from our CFO, Chris Gardner, beginning at 11. So don't go too far away from your screen, and you'll hear from him. And then we'll get a report on the incoming class and the enrollment situation, which is a good news story at Wofford from Brand Stilley at 11:30. So come back and see us soon. See you in about 15 minutes, 11 o'clock. All right, if you are anywhere near campus today, you can hear that the bell in the bell tower of main building just tolled 11. So that means that we are back. And I want to welcome you back and also introduce you, if you have not yet met him, to our wonderful Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Chris Gardner. Chris is going to walk us through the basics of the college's financial model and then discuss some of the impacts that the pandemic has already had in the college's finances this year, and any potential impacts that we might anticipate in the future, depending on how things go. And as always, he will be happy to take some questions at the end. So Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be with everyone, even in this somewhat virtual way. And since I can't see any of you, I'm going to assume that you all laugh at any jokes I make throughout this entire process. And so that's, I appreciate you all in advance for being such a great audience. You know, Naif already talked a little bit about fiscal 20, but I'm going to repeat it because it's a good story. And I want to say it as often as we can. As he mentioned, we finished the year about $2.2 million ahead of budget, or $2.2 million to our bottom line, about $2 million ahead of our budget. And that is essentially where we thought we were going to be before the COVID pandemic hit. When we were sitting here in February, that's about where we thought we were going to be, and that's where we ended up. And that, as Naif alluded to, is a reflection of everyone on the campus pitching in, doing their part to reduce spending over the course of the final 3.5 months of the year when we were all learning remotely. Certainly we spent money in certain areas to make sure that we had the capacity to do remote instruction, but we also reduced spending across campus. And so it's really an incredible achievement, and it's a reflection of everyone on this campus who manages or stewards some of our resources. And I'm incredibly grateful for all of those people who took the steps that they took to get us where we are today. And, you know, that one of the things we tried to do as we responded to the pandemic, and we'll continue to try to do, is let the data guide our response more so than fear or concern. We want to be prepared for what might happen, but we want to follow the data and not get too far out ahead of the data in any direction. So having said that, we're going to sort of very briefly, I'll try to get through my prepared remarks relatively quickly while also hitting the important points and leave some time for Q&A. We've got about 30 minutes allotted for this section, and I will take all of those questions at the end just for simplicity's sake, given the structure. So we're going to walk through really quickly just the basic structure of Wofford's finances, where our money comes from and where it goes, and then talk about how COVID-19 has and may impact us going forward. So as we transition to the next slide, there's really a couple different ways we acquire resources, and then they get categorized in different manners. And so we can talk about operating revenues and non-operating revenues. And so operating revenues are kind of what they sound like. It's all the revenues that we receive in the ordinary course of our operation. So that would be, of course, comprehensive fee revenue, by far the most significant source of revenue. And then annually each year, we designate an amount from our endowment that gets freed up to use to support our operations. We also have annual giving, and then a whole variety of other revenue sources, athletic revenue, summer school, bookstore, et cetera, that also provide smaller support. And then we have non-operating revenues, which are endowment gifts. Plant gifts does not mean horticultural gifts, but gifts that support the physical plan of the institution. So that's buildings, campus projects, other things of that sort. And then the big piece is investment gains and losses. And so you'll notice in fiscal 20, about 99% of our revenue was operating. These numbers swing wildly because of the, in particular, investment gains and losses. When we experience investment losses, then the non-operating revenue can be dragged down even to a negative number, depending on the situation. And also the endowment and plant gifts tend not to be smooth. They tend to come in bigger chunks, depending on what's going on campus with the campaign and other things. So we've seen these numbers vary anywhere from sort of in a given year, only 40% of our resources that came into the institution were operating revenues, and as much as 60% were non-operating. And then of course we had a year like fiscal 20 where we had some investment losses in the endowment over the final, several months of the year. And so it looks like basically all of our revenue was operating revenue. The other way to look at revenue is to think of it in terms of restriction. And so on the next slide, we see that split. And this is kind of an important way also to understand our revenue. So anytime a donor gives us money, they have the ability in one way or another to restrict the use of that money for a specific purpose or for a specific period of time. And so that's the only way that funds that the college generates can be restricted, is if the donor creates a restriction that limits our use of the funds. And so this past year, we saw that about 83% of our revenue was unrestricted revenue that we could use for any purpose and that contribute to the general operations of the college, and about 17% came from restricted giving in some way or another. And there's a place for both of those in the overall financial health of the institution. So as we move on, then we also look at, so what we tend to talk about when we talk about the finances of the institution are the operating budget, and for good reason. That's exactly what it sounds like. It includes all of our operating revenues and expenses, but it excludes all of those non-operating revenues and expenses. Because we can't really control them, and we can't necessarily spend them even when we receive them. There may be time restrictions and other restrictions. And so the operating budget really funds the vast majority of our ongoing operations. Virtually all of our academic, research, administrative programming is coming through the operating budget, with just a very limited amount of private or federal grants and other sources that might support specific programs. But the vast majority of the institution and what we strive to manage on a sort of month-to-month basis is from our operating budget. So within the operating budget, then we've got on the next slide, we have a breakout of the sources of operating revenue for the institution. And for many of you, this may not be new information, but for some of you it is. And so the first thing to point out is that roughly almost exactly 75% of the net operating revenue of the college comes from comprehensive fee sources. That's net tuition and fees and net room and board. And then the next largest portion of our revenue is from the annual endowment spend. And I point that out specifically because in our case, that endowment spending for this coming fiscal year has already been fixed. And so that big piece, 13%, we already know what that number is, and it will not change regardless of what happens in the financial markets. And that actually is probably an area of difference between Wofford and some other institutions you're reading about who may not fix their spending in advance of their fiscal year. But in our case, that was actually already fixed before the pandemic began to affect the market values of the endowment. And so that's been a source of advantage for us, I think, relative to some others. And then again, we talk about annual giving, athletic, summer school, and a variety of other revenue sources that make up smaller portions of the budget. And the total size of the pie then for last year was just under $65 million on the revenue side, and just under $63 million here on the operating expense side. And as you would imagine, for an institution of our type, the majority of our expenses are driven by our people. We're a people-heavy and people-dependent organization, and that's one of our great strengths. And so as a result, a little over 60% of the pie on our operating expense side is in salaries and wages and the costs of providing employee benefits. And so that's really important to understand as we start to think about stresses facing the institution from a financial perspective. And then the next piece of these are areas that we really can't control. Utilities expenses, food service expenses do go up and down depending on what's going on at the institution, but it's very difficult for us to control them in any significant or meaningful way over the course of a year. Debt service is the cost of interest and principal payments that we require on our carried debt. And so that's also not a number we can control, which leaves us with about 20% in our replacement and renewal to support the physical campus and what I call our discretionary operating dollars that we can control at any given time without touching employee benefits and salaries and wages. And even at 20% of the budget being sort of discretionary or controllable, some of those costs are still fixed and locked in for any given academic year. So that's, I think, important to understand, and to understand kind of the context in which we're operating as we think about the future and how COVID-19 could impact us. And so, if we think about the various sources of revenue that we showed on the previous slide, COVID-19 can impact virtually all of them. If we see declines in enrollment, or if there's pressure on the institution to reduce tuition and fees because we have to transition to remote instruction, we could see tuition and fees revenue be affected. If we have to transition to remote instruction and send students home, we could see net room and board revenue affected, and we did. And Naif alluded to that. We spent about $2 million, a little over $2 million sending refunds to our students back in the spring when we sent them home. Annual giving is probably the hardest one to predict. It's hard to know how an unprecedented global pandemic is going to affect how students choose to, or how supporters choose to provide their funds to the institution. I will say, and Brand may talk about it later, but the Advancement Office has done terrific work since May, raising over $500,000 to provide additional scholarship support in this upcoming academic year for students whose financial circumstances have been affected by the pandemic. And so in a lot of ways, annual giving still looks pretty positive for us right now, but it's the hardest one probably of all of our revenue sources to predict. As you can imagine, with the changes to athletics that have been announced, the revenues we receive from athletics will certainly be projected to go down. Summer school revenue was down a bit since we didn't have students living on campus, although at this point that is known. And then we will see, one-offs here and there and some of our other smaller revenue sources that will be affected as well. And then the last item I put on here was foreign study programs. And I put that on here because there's a fairly significant financial cost associated with sending students on study away programs. And that's a cost that's well worth it to the institution, I think, as we all know, in terms of the value for the student experience that it provides. However, in the case of COVID-19, we do get a net financial benefit from students not being able to go abroad. And so as we've worked through some of the issues over the course of the summer, trying to gauge, what the financial impact of COVID-19 is and will be on the institution, I've talked about that with the board and others as a little bit of an insurance policy where if, the COVID-19 situation is such that, we're in jeopardy of delivering in-person instruction, it also jeopardizes our ability to deliver effective study away programs. And that provides a bit of an insurance policy against some of the losses that we could potentially see. So I just wanted to point that out for all of you. And yes, Mike has correctly clarified, I am talking about semester-long programs. Interim programs are a very different financial model, and they don't actually affect the operating budget in the same way because those are largely sort of funded as incremental expenses by students rather than through the general operations of the college. So if we flip to the next slide, this slide is in thousands, so 45,000 is really 45 million. But this is the scale of what our typical revenue sources would be each year. So the total height of the bar tells you what we would normally expect in our budget. And then the shaded area tells you how much could potentially be in jeopardy depending on the particular scenarios that play out. And so the shaded bars you see here are mostly kind of worst case scenarios that we're contemplating here. But again, we can envision scenarios where as much as $6 million or more is at stake in net tuition and fees if we go to online instruction and students choose not to persist in that mode of instruction for various reasons or demand concessions on pricing. And we've seen a mixed bag in that area across the country as different institutions have transitioned to remote instruction, whether they've given discounts or not. And then net room and board, again, we can envision a scenario where we could lose as much as $5 to $6 million in net room and board revenue. The fact is, every week that we don't spend on campus costs us about $400,000. So if we have, we've considered the possibility that is up to 15, 16 weeks over the next couple months could be remote. We hope that's not the case, but those are possibilities. And then, as I mentioned, you'll see there's nothing in jeopardy in the annual endowment spend for the upcoming fiscal year. Annual giving, again, is the big question mark, but so far trends there are positive. So I haven't, we do have some scenarios where we see a drop in annual giving, but I'm not presenting those here. And then again, a significant drop in athletic revenues, although as you can see, that and summer school are a much smaller piece of the overall pie. So we do look at the possibility of having exposure of up to, in the worst case scenarios, $12 to $13 million out of a $65 million operation. So that's a pretty substantial, as much as a 20% decline in revenue. And as you remembered, I told you that the total number of sort of controllable expenses was only about 20% of the entire institution's spending profile. So in those worst case scenarios, there are significant measures that would need to be taken. Right now, we're not really tracking towards those worst case scenarios, and I want to be clear about that. Right now, we're in really good shape, and so our enrollment is strong, as Brand will talk about. We're moving students into campus, and so at this moment, we're in as good a shape as we could possibly hope to be. The question is what happens over the next 3 months. And so, as many of you are aware, I just wanted to remind everyone of the steps we've taken to date to preserve the financial strength of the institution. So the first thing we did right away with COVID was we eliminated non-essential travel. And then pretty quickly after that, we asked all of our budget managers to freeze spending as much as they reasonably could. We announced hiring freezes, and as many of you know, we announced a salary freeze beyond September 1st. And then with students and buildings being shut down, we saw decreases in utility savings and food service savings. And so those are all steps we've taken and kind of continue to take to the extent that we can. And then the last item that we're working on is what I've called liquidity preservation. And that's just strategies to maximize the cash in our bank account and that's available to us. And we've looked at some changes in our debt structure to relieve some of the debt service this year. That's not something that we would need to do. If everything went smoothly, we wouldn't need to do that. But we're not necessarily counting on that. And so, one of the questions I think that's reasonable to ask is, on the one hand, you're saying we've had great financial results, we're the strongest we've ever been. And on the other hand, you're freezing salaries and other expenses. Why that dichotomy? And so if it's, if I haven't made it clear from my previous comments, it's really about being prepared for whatever COVID throws at us. And that trying to, really my goal as I try to manage and steward the institution's resources is to buy us time to make smart, well-reasoned strategic decisions. And so that So I'm trying to accumulate as much flexibility for the college as I possibly can, so that whatever happens, we don't have to take knee-jerk reactions that haven't been considered and well thought through. And so that's really the goal of everything we're doing. And that's why, as we kind of assemble and take our time and collect as many resources as we can, that's why we can let the data guide us rather than try to make decisions in anticipation of something that might or might not happen. And I think that's some of the ways that other institutions have felt pressured to respond to the unknown, because they don't have or haven't been able to create flexibility in their operating model. And we, for a variety of reasons, we have been able to create a certain amount of that flexibility. And the fact, and it's all driven by the great enrollment results that Brand will report more than anything else. So as you can imagine, if instruction goes remote, if we see significant disruption of our revenue streams as a result of COVID-19 over the next semester or so, there are additional actions that we will have to contemplate. And so those are the things we're trying to avoid. Further reductions of operating expenses, looking at ways to cut either salary or benefit costs. Those are solutions we would have to explore. We can say that we have $10 million in operating reserves, which we do. But as I talked about, we can envision worst case scenarios where our revenue losses exceed that. And so simply absorbing those kinds of revenue losses will not necessarily be feasible, though we've done a great job so far of absorbing quite a few revenue challenges. And I would say it's not at this point my expectation that we need to do some of these more extreme measures on the right side of this slide, but we all need to be aware that if the situation turns against us, if our finances start to get tight, those are steps that we'll have to be considering and that we'll have to work through as an institution. So the final slide, and then I'll throw it open for some questions, is this is a takeaway slide that I shared with the board in our very first real financial conversation coming out of the pandemic. And this is copied absolutely verbatim because everything that's on it is still true today at the end of August, as when I said it back in April. So again, we are an enrollment and tuition dependent institution, and that's paramount to our financial health and success. One thing that we all can be mindful of is that every institution is in sort of the same boat. And certainly we've seen those announcements from other institutions. We're all trying to figure out how to navigate this pandemic from a financial perspective. The good news is we're entering this pandemic, and we're entering from a position of financial strength. At the time we had 6 years of good enrollment results. Brand can now report a 7th year in a row of really strong enrollment results. And then the last thing, and we thought it was true in April when I shared some information with the board, and I know it's true now because we've experienced it, is that we can manage through the disruption of in-person instruction without, taking massive cuts across the institution or massively, as Naif talked about, hurting the material wealth of our faculty and staff. But if those changes in instruction or other disruptions caused by the pandemic begin to affect our enrollment or our tuition revenue, we need to watch that very closely, and we need to respond quickly and meaningfully if we start to see those pressures impacting the institution. So that's a lot of information in a short amount of time. As always, I'm available to people. If you have questions or additional questions outside of this session, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. But in the meantime, I do want to address some of the questions that you all may have and have submitted and maybe will submit over the next couple of minutes.
Chris, this question is from Kim Banks. He asked if you could give an example of discretionary spending. 18% is pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally all of our programmatic spend. So that's everything from office supplies, professional fees, whatever you do in your department that isn't salaries, that's all going to be discretionary spend. Travel, entertainment, meals, food, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it basically, I'm calling all of that discretionary. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's fixed, and that may look like a a large number to you. But if I, many of you know my background is more in for-profit manufacturing, that number would look a lot more like 60% using the same sort of method that I've come up with for a for-profit entity, not in higher ed. So because we're so people specific, that's a much smaller number. And you think about, again, if you think about us cutting every sort of administrative and academic program's operating budget by 10%, that still only moves the needle in our total institutional budget by about 2%. So it may look big, but it's very hard to change to change materially the direction of the college's finances solely through adjustments to that discretionary pool.
And then Zachary Davis has a follow-up. How much of that discretionary spending is academic, department budgets, library, etc.?
I don't know that off the top of my head. Generally speaking, the instructional portion of the institution is roughly 30 to 40% of the institution. So I expect that the discretionary is a similar percentage, give or take a point or two.
Okay, we have a question from Ben Cartwright. What would be the revenue loss financial impact of a disruption to interim?
Yeah, so again, the travel interims and interim fees are sort of incremental to the budget, right? Those of you who have run interim programs know you collect, let's say, $50,000 from your students in fees, and then you turn around and spend about $50,000 to run your program. So canceling travel interim really doesn't have any impact overall on the operations of the college. I know that there's a small reserve fee and other things in there, but those do not have a material impact on the college. Now, if we just didn't do interim at all, we typically associate about 10% of our comprehensive fee with the interim term. And so if we just had no interim term at all and couldn't justify charging that portion of the comprehensive fee, then we'd be talking about a 10% hit. I imagine that that's not something that's high on our list of responses to the COVID pandemic. I think that we'll find some creative solutions if we find ourselves in that situation.
Okay, this one's from Amy Lancaster. When you say declines in enrollment, what is our threshold when we know there's a trend or a problem? She's not asking for a specific number, but can you give us a sense of when we're nearing a point of concern?
Yeah, it's a good question. It depends. There's a lot of moving parts, but for me, we're at 1760. That's going to be higher than what we budgeted, most likely. And I tend to look at it in terms of maybe 3 to 5% is when we need to start growing concern. So if I'm doing my math right, that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 80 students. If we start to decline below budget by that amount, that becomes a point where we really need to start responding to that situation.
Okay, this is from Kim Banks. I'm sure that everyone has this question on their minds. Chris, can you suggest what, in the worst case scenario, you would anticipate might have to be enacted in terms of a % range decline in benefits and salaries? It would be helpful to have a worst case scenario as we plan for our families in the short term.
Yeah, again, that's a really tough question because we want to make sure that the decisions we make are strategic in nature. And the fact is that depending on the type of disruption, different employees, different faculty members will be affected in different ways. So here's what how I would answer that question. First of all, I've personally, when this all started, I started thinking about how would I respond to a 10% reduction in my pay. That's been my personal, just how would I respond for my own family. And then the other thing is I have asked and had asked the cabinet to think about what would they do if they were asked for either 5% or 10% reductions in both operating and personnel type costs. How would they handle that? And again, that would vary depending on which part of the institution you're in. But those are kind of all the scenarios that we've talked about. So if you're thinking in that, 5 to 10% range, that's certainly the scenarios that we've been talking about as an institution. Now we're not, we haven't really moved particularly far down any of those roads because the data is not driving us down those roads at this point.
This is from Ryan Johnson. Chris, really good overview. Do you know if our NCAA units from last year, men's basketball appearance, and when are adjusted by the NCAA? Are those fixed as in can those change as a result of changing finances?
Yeah, so the units are fixed. The problem is the dollar amount associated with them has changed quite a bit. And, the hope, and hope might be the best word, is that we have an NCAA tournament again this spring, and they're able to sort of restore the value of those units to something close to what they were before. But with no NCAA tournament, the value of all of the NCAA distributions across for Wofford and across the country were reduced by about 65% compared to what would have been anticipated.
Okay, we have another question from Dave Kusher. What is the likelihood of moving interim to the end of the school year, April into May?
That's probably a better question for Mike or the calendar committee, but again, I think that's more likely than canceling interim outright, for sure, at least from my perspective.
Mike, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll just concur with Chris. I mean, we are thinking about all kinds of different scenarios depending on how the pandemic moves and we with it through the year. So that's a possibility that's on the table. We'll know, Amy can correct me if I get this wrong, and I apologize, Amy Lancaster, if I do, but we're gonna know in September about the feasibility of travel interims, and that'll help us in thinking about, what the best opportunity for sort of recovering that experience for everyone would be. So we're continuing to think about this and plan.
Amy said you are correct.
Yay, I got it right.
All right, that's all the questions I see.
That's great. Those are really good questions. I hope everyone found this as informative as I did. Chris, this was really terrific. Thank you so much for sharing that kind of foundational information about how our finances work and helping us think clearly about what the potential impacts could look like depending on what may come our way. So really do appreciate you sharing that today.
Sure, thanks, Mike. I think it's, I continue to tell people and will continue to say, I remain cautiously optimistic. I mean, the college is in as good a position as we could expect to be, but we have to be. That doesn't change the fact that we need to be vigilant.
Amen to that. We are in a great position. We are in a much better position than many of our peer institutions are, and we still have to be very careful as we move forward. So thank you. All right, so I am just impressed. We are moving along right on time. This is great. So now I want to turn to the last segment of this morning's pre-session community gathering program. And I'm going to start by saying, in case you haven't yet heard, Wofford has had, once again, some pretty spectacular success recruiting our first year class. And I know you have heard that because Chris just mentioned it, and he's right to do so. Last year was a record-setting pace in terms of applications for admission, and this year we again exceeded last year's record. So I want to offer my hearty congratulations and heaps of gratitude to Mr. Brand Stilley, our Vice President for Enrollment, and his excellent team in both admission and financial aid for all the hard work and the creativity and the success that they've achieved in recent years. It really is remarkable. I always look forward to hearing Brand describe the incoming class because he and his team have invariably come to know them all so well. I know you're going to enjoy hearing about them too. So Brand, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce the new class, but I want to begin by just welcoming the new faculty and staff to our community. That our enrollment results are a reflection of our entire community. And so I think that this good news that I'm going to share is a reflection of all the good work that's being done at Wofford. And so thanks again for all your help. And for those of you who are new, that our success in enrollment is a team effort. And so we're glad you're now a part of the team. We'll be calling on you to help this year. We're also excited that we have a new director of admission after completing a national search this summer. And Megan Tyler, who was formerly an associate director of admission at Wofford, has been named our new director of admission. She's off to a great start, and so I hope you'll join me in congratulating her when you see her in person, and send her all congratulations. She's off to a great start. We're thrilled that she's in this new leadership role. She's done excellent work for us for many years, and I know that she's going to be great in her new role at Wofford as well. We have had a record year in many ways, and if you'll just go to the next slide, it started with more applications than we've ever received before, just over 4,100 applications. We accepted just under 2,200 of those. And so our acceptance rate at 53% is 6 points below where we were last year, and a record acceptance rate for the college. We've never had an acceptance rate that has been this low. We also had record numbers of early decision applicants this year, which was really helpful in this regard. And so we were thrilled about that. We have 498 new first-year students who will join us or who have joined us. In addition, 21 transfer students, slightly more women than men. And I think overall we're at about 52% women. And so this first year class will keep us at that total. We had a few more students from South Carolina join us this year, and that may be pandemic related, but those numbers are pretty close to what they've been in the past. 25 states and 7 foreign countries are represented in the first year class. We'll do the numbers the first week of school, but this past year we had 40 states represented and 30 countries represented in the student body. 19% of our first year students are minority or international, and 8 of those are international students. As far as the academic credentials of our first year class, we recalculate. We spend an incredible amount of time recalculating every student's GPA when they apply based on our own scale. And the recalculated high school GPA for first year students is 3.72. And this is the highest that number has ever been. And so thanks to improved selectivity, we're seeing improvement in the profile of our students as well. This recalculated GPA is the best predictor of how students will perform at Wofford. And so we're excited about this number. The average high school GPA for new students is just over a 4.0. Testing, again, has improved. You see the mid 50% SAT and ACT there. And just for a bit more detail, the 75th percentile SAT last year was 1340, and so that number declined slightly. But on the ACT mid 50%, the 25th and the 75th percentile improved by a point. And every ACT point is worth 30 to 40 SAT points. And so testing overall has improved. Typically, our students are taking SAT and ACT equally, so similar numbers there. So good news on the academic profile. So if you go to the next slide, I'm not going to read all of these things, but this is just information that we collect on students and the activities that they participate in high school. I'll point out a few that 141 new students have a legacy connection. We're pretty generous in how we define this. And any student who lists a relative on their application gets counted as a legacy. It's not just children or grandchildren, but a significant number of our new students have relatives who had attended Wofford previously. 96 are student athletes, and you see the number who have signed and the number who are walk-ons there. 88% are Pell eligible, which is a strong number. And then finally, I wanted to point out that 14 of our new students are employee dependents, the children of employees, at Wofford. This is the largest number of employee dependents we've ever enrolled. I believe that is a record. So we're excited about that number as well. And I'm going to share some additional information that won't be included on a slide, just to try to characterize this group of new students who's joined us. But it includes AP scholars and AP scholars with distinction, state championships in track, debate, motocross, mock trial, tennis, soccer, and a state champion in a cooking competition as well. A black belt in Taekwondo, the 2020 Daughters of the American Revolution Citizen of the Year in South Carolina, an Odyssey of the Mind world champion, a Canadian who's currently applying for US citizenship, a certified emergency medical technician, a rapper whose songs are on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube, the top-rated tennis player in Mexico, and a certified CrossFit trainer. One of our new students climbed a glacier, another summited a 14er, another performed at Carnegie Hall and has exhibited at the High Museum in Atlanta. One participated in 4 Black Lives Matter protests. One ran 1,000 miles over a year. Another has a 93-mile-per-hour fastball. One student had their research accepted by the International Conference of Microwave Spectroscopy. Another started a blog to address mass migration in Africa. And one student took a 6,000-mile road trip through 14 states this summer. In response to COVID-19, our new students wanted us to know that one has learned Gujarati and another learned sign language. Several students learned to play ukulele. Another learned to sew and made over 200 masks for her friends and neighbors. Another raised a pet cow that had to be bottle fed because its mother didn't survive. Another created a tribute video for his senior class. One student wanted us to know that he had read 15 books over quarantine, if you need any encouragement there. Another trained for a marathon. And one, maybe the most honest of our new students, said that they had binged Game of Thrones in a week. And finally, one student wanted us to know, they listed this as an accomplishment, that they had survived quarantine with their family. And so I'm glad that we can all report that we have achieved that accomplishment as well. And last but not least, one of our new students said that she had been blessed by Pope Francis on New Year's Day this past year. And so I've wondered, what in the world 2020 would have looked like had she not received this blessing. I guess that she could, for not this blessing, be enrolled at Furman right now. We've all been blessed by Dr. Robinson, and so looking forward for a great year there. There's also good news to report on the retention front, and so if you'll go to the next slide. 1,244 students we're expecting to return soon, and this is, I believe, 12 students more than returned this past year. And so retention expectations are better than a record year last year. And so we're projecting that total enrollment will be 1,763 students. Last year, we started fall with 1,725. Part of this retention result is an initiative that Chris mentioned earlier. The Advancement Office, primarily through contacts with the Board of Trustees, after our May board meeting, in a very short time, raised $500,000 to support students and families who have been impacted by COVID-19. And so we had just about 100 applications for these funds, and we've been able to award the large majority of those to students who were impacted. And so I think this was an incredible show of support from our board members, and we were thrilled to be able to provide this assistance to our students. And great work by the Advancement Office as well. We surveyed students again this year and asked them about their reasons for choosing Wofford. And as is almost always the case, academic reputation remains at the top of the list. And in my opinion, the faculty are the most important element in any college's academic reputation. And so in my mind, that puts you at the top of the list in terms of importance of students choosing Wofford. Access to faculty was another factor that was highly rated by new students on this survey as well. And so we'll be calling on you again this year. Things are going to be a little bit different. We're not going to be able to travel very much at all to recruit, but we'll be hosting a number of virtual sessions for new students, and we'd like to have participation from faculty in those. We've contacted department chairs recently with information about how we'd like for you to assist us. And we'll be scheduling departmental presentations for prospective students via Zoom throughout the semester. And what we'd like to do is have each department represented 2 or 3 times over the course of the semester. And so we'll be in touch again soon with a reminder about how you and your department can be represented and can connect with prospective students over the course of the semester. And finally, the common application, which is the only way students can apply to Wofford, opened on August the 1st. And I'm pleased to report that applications for 2021 are up right now by 40%. It's very early and the numbers are not large yet, but we're excited about the course of 2021 and we've gotten off to a great start and looking forward to another great year with lots of support from all of you. And so at this time, I'll see if there are any questions about the first year class.
We have one from Bill DeMars. How does the 68 first generation entering students compare to recent years and trends?
I think the 68 first generation students may be a little bit lower than this past year. I seem to recall, don't quote me on this, but I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of low 70s. But I can check on that and respond to you, Bill, later today. Oh, I just got I just got the information from a colleague. 79 last year. I'm 73 last year was the number. First generation students.
Joanne, I see that Ken Banks has raised his hand.
I am about to promote him to panelist.
All right.
Let's see if that worked. Ken, I think you're on.
I'm on to speak?
Yes, go.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that. I just wanted to, I sent out a post to everybody. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but I just want to give a huge clap of the hands to Brand and his team, 498 students. If you have been following other institutions, is amazing. I mean, this is, I am so excited. So thank you, Brand, and your team.
Thank you very much, Ken. And you know, and I just can't repeat enough that, you know, enrollment is a reflection of the entire community. And I appreciate, you know, all the comments that I'm seeing here and appreciate your mentioning that, Ken. We get great support and we're going to be depending on that again. And, you know, there are areas where we were not as successful as we would like to be. And so we're working, for example, the number of minority students, the number is about the same this year as the last, but because we have a larger class, the percentage dropped by 1. We'd like to see both the number and the percentage improve in years to come. And so we've got some efforts in place And we've been working over the course of the summer and even last spring to try to make some improvements on diversity at Wofford in that regard. And so you all will be involved in those efforts as well. But thank you for all your support, and look forward to doing it again this year.
Okay, great. We do have a question from Zachary Davis. Did we do anything with Jolly this summer? That may be a Mike question.
I think that's the Gateway Scholars Program.
Yes.
We continued the Gateway Scholars Program, but we did it remotely this summer. And I think because we did it remotely, we were able to include more students because the cost of doing it remotely was less than doing it in person.
Okay, I don't see any additional questions. No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, Brand, thank you very much. It's always an entertaining and really informative opportunity to hear from you about the incoming class. And I'm just going to echo again everyone's congratulations on your hard work. You're right, it is a community effort, but you and your team are on the front lines, and your expertise and experience there really bring it home. And so thank you again for that great work. So now we're going to take a break for lunch, and the program will continue at 1 o'clock with a Zoom discussion of responses in residential and student social life at Wofford to the COVID-19 pandemic. And there'll be a couple of wonderful programs right after that at 1 at 2 and 1 at 3. And once again, the Zoom links you're going to find in your daily announcements today. And I want to thank all the people who presented this morning, as well as special thanks to Melissa Mann, Kay Foster, Joanne Brazington, and all of our presenters. You all did a terrific job. Thanks for helping pull this session together. And I want to thank everyone who participated online, faculty and staff. You all had great questions and were wonderful participants today. So thanks for being with us. And we look forward to seeing you this afternoon. Have a great lunch, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.